It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to AskSCW here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave in the comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Talking some major talking points here, answering your questions in the wrestling community. If you want to be involved on the next episode of AskSCW and get yourself a shout out, leave the hashtag AskSCW. You can drop a comment on YouTube or you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All should be coming up on your screen right about now. Going to talk about WWE, AEW, NXT, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's get straight into it with our first question this week. And our first question this week coming from none other than Straight Edge Josh, asking, what do you think of Andrade and the requested release situation? It's been coming, hasn't it? Let's be fair here. Looking at Andrade, he's not been on WWE TV since October. He wasn't even drafted in the last WWE draft. So it's felt a bit like the writing's been on the wall for Andrade for a while, that he doesn't really have any sort of future in WWE, and it seems criminal really because the guy is mega talented. I know he's not the best promo in the world, but I mean previously he had Zelina Vega by his side, who of course isn't with the company either now, but if he could have someone as a manager role for him, doing the talking for him, I don't see how Andrade couldn't be a bigger deal in WWE. Certainly is at least mid-card level, I would say, mid to upper mid-card level. I don't have him quite at the main event area, but I think he could be utilised very well on TV, and if he can't find a role on Raw or SmackDown, I would say why not put him back in NXT, because I think there's a great place for him there. He was booked very well in NXT before, a former NXT champion. Of course as well, I've suggested on the channel many times before, I think Legado del Fantasma could do with another member. Someone like Andrade who would be main event level, would take that whole stable and put it to that main event status. And of course, when you look at it with Santos Escobar as well, he's a great mouthpiece. Yes, he's the leader and would be Cruiserweight champion, but I think it still would be fine to have, you know, Andrade as the second member of that group and in order and going for the NXT championship. But of course, like we say, none of this has happened, and you know, he has requested for his release. He is of course with Charlotte Flair in real life, and that's not really made a difference to his spot on TV either. He's been unhappy, and he's obviously wanted to leave the company. The request has been denied since that report came out that he'd asked for his release on Raw this past week. So WWE obviously feels like maybe they may have a plan for him in the future, or they just don't want to see him at a rival. And it's a shame because it's a huge talent that is being wasted, because Andrade, let's be fair, like I said, he has got a lot of potential there, and if he was to be released from WWE, I mean, of course, there'd probably be the 90 days, but AEW would definitely snap up a talent like him. And of course, Zelina Vega, now her 90-day release clause is up. You could partner them up in another company. Impact Wrestling would benefit. I think Andrade would be a big deal in Impact Wrestling. I would even have him at the championship level. I think in AEW, you're looking at the TNT level, perhaps working your way up, and could be the main event, but certainly wouldn't start at that point. But it's something that doesn't surprise me, I think, is where we're going to leave this topic here, because, I mean, he's not on TV, he's not being featured, and the question really, ultimately, is why? Because the guy is mega talented. He should be used, but unfortunately it's not happening. So my thoughts are, I'm not surprised that it's happened. I'm actually less surprised that the request has been denied, because a number of superstars who have been released from WWE have gone on to do great things since leaving the company. And of course, last year when WWE did do a big release of talent, they haven't really done that as much since. They did let Steve Cutler go earlier this year, but it was more for a firing rather than actually a release. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen further down the line as this story develops further. But in the meantime, I'm not surprised if everything's turning out, but I just hope that we get a happy resolution, whether Andrade gets to go off eventually and show, you know, what he can do in the ring elsewhere, or WWE actually finds something for him to do, because there is plenty of things he could be doing on WWE TV. In fact, even he was in the team last year with Angel Garza. Garza isn't doing that much on Raw either. Just put that team back together. I think, personally, they had the friction all the time. If they could be on the same page, that team would work, and Raw would actually strengthen in the tag team division, which also is severely lacking right now. Austin Whitley with our next question now here on AskSCW. Do you think a return to NXT could help Aleister Black, or just leave the company? Kind of similar to this last one, and Zelina Vega ties in again, weirdly enough. But yeah, of course, Aleister Black hasn't been on TV again since October, but he was drafted to SmackDown at least, and he hasn't been on TV, of course, since Zelina Vega has left the company. I imagine there's unrest and unhappiness. I imagine that Aleister Black probably wants to leave WWE, but again, if you were going to ask me, I think NXT booked Aleister Black so well before. I did a video not so long ago, and both Andrade and Aleister Black were 2 of the 5 WWE superstars that I said should move back to NXT. And it's a video I highly recommend checking out if you haven't seen it already, which is, I'll tag it at the end of this video actually, so people can go and check it out. But looking at it, Aleister Black, he's got a unique look, he's got a great in-ring skill, he's someone that could stand out. He's really different from, you know, your average WWE or wrestling performer in any company, and I think he would thrive somewhere else. He would be the main event somewhere else, and arguably he should be a main event player in WWE. And if they're not going to book him on Raw or SmackDown, again, it's same with Andrade. Why waste superstars putting them in catering when they've got a lot of talent to show? Put them back to NXT. NXT is a very strong roster, but they could always do with 1 or 2 of these names that could probably go down there and put on phenomenal takeover matches and possibly even boost those ratings a little bit. I mean, of course, there's rumours NXT is moving to Tuesdays after WrestleMania. Why not move 1 or 2 of those names back there? They have a chance to re-establish themselves, put themselves in a strong position. Maybe they can come back to Raw or SmackDown. Maybe happiness can be restored. But in the meantime, if you ask me, I would move him back to NXT. But of course, the happiness is what comes down to the performer. And I imagine with both Andrade and Aleister Black at this particular time, if their contracts ever come up from WWE, I don't see him re-signing. Next question coming from The Kid, Mikey Wilkes. I will ask SCW if Bray Wyatt should be held off from returning until WrestleMania, or if they should pull the trigger for FastLane. It's a great question, this one, and for me, I'm going to say it has to be done before WrestleMania. Now, of course, in the rumour mill, The Fiend is meant to be rumoured to be facing Randy Orton on his return, which I think is fairly obvious with the storyline going. WrestleMania would seem like the most likely destination for that match. For me, he has to return before. You could do almost like what you did with The Undertaker when he faced Bray Wyatt, that the actual return happens at WrestleMania. Maybe the teases start from Fastlane and build themselves up, and The Fiend actually returns at WrestleMania. That certainly is actually a great idea. But for me as well, I kind of feel that we need to get something in motion going. We can't just not have The Fiend return to TV until WrestleMania and then extend this storyline with Randy Orton even further. The match has to happen by WrestleMania. So for me, right now, if you were asking me, Fastlane has 0 meaning whatsoever. And I did a video actually just a couple of days ago of, you know, the problem with Fastlane in 2021, how WWE should book it, and The Fiend returning was one idea that I think should go down at this event because it gives a bit of purpose, a bit of direction towards WrestleMania. If Randy Orton's competing on this show and The Fiend does return after that match, it would make a lot of sense to do that. So for me, that's how I think it should go down. Give us a bit of excitement and build and purpose WrestleMania. But if you want to do it and tease step by step so that if you want the clues have been done, the supernatural cinematic style, let's have less Papa Shango vomits, let's have more clues, let's have things of suggesting Randy Orton, Raymond James Stadium, I will be there, just I will be there. Leave that clue there, give some excitement in that way and build it week upon week, link it to Alexa Bliss, and as WrestleMania comes along, Randy Orton's waiting in the ring and The Fiend returns with a new look, you know, to him, perhaps a more darker, more edgier Fiend than we've seen before, can come back and absolutely annihilate Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and I think we'll get everyone talking. So actually, in some ways, before this question, I would have said definitely Fastlane, but maybe you can start it at Fastlane, building the story, and the return itself can be at WrestleMania. We've got the big fight Phil coming for us next now here from YouTube. It's Joseph Conlin asking, how would you book the match next week between Cody Rhodes and Penta on AEW Dynamite? It's a superb question, this one, and for me, we look like we are getting a refreshed push for Penta on AEW, which I'm so happy about. Penta is one of my favourite wrestlers. I've been a big fan of his work since watching him in Lucha Underground, and now we're seeing a much more edgier, cockier style with him. He's got the translator to really, now we can just let loose and speak in Spanish, and we can get those, you know, really edgy lines coming from the translation. I love that. It really made Penta just go right up the pecking order straight away, and I want to see a bit of Lucha Underground Penta come into AEW. Cody Rhodes has had a shoulder injury for a little while now, and actually Penta took him out of the match at Revolution, which of course Cody did make the return. Let's have a relentless, zero fear Penta, someone that is not afraid to break arms, break shoulders. Have that gimmick brought into AEW, someone that will break bones, doesn't care, will do what he needs to do to get ahead, because if that Penta is introduced to AEW, the sky is the absolute limit for this guy. Penta must win in this match, in my opinion. Cody should put him over, and Penta should go into the TNT Championship picture. I think he would be a perfect candidate candidate to go against Darby Allin. They could have a fantastic storyline building either to Double or Nothing or perhaps the next AEW Dynamite special that they may have in between the pay-per-views. I think that would be a great method and a great way for it to go down. But yeah, I want to see that Penta come to AEW. Someone that breaks arms, takes names, doesn't care, because eventually when that Penta, if that Penta gets an opportunity to turn babyface later down the line, that Penta will go all the way to the top of AEW and will become a real marketable name, in my opinion. Next question comes from Brian Krigo. Is AEW building up Thunder Rosa as the conscience of the women's division? It sure seems that way. It really does. I mean, if you look this week coming up on AEW Dynamite, it's so great to see that Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker are going to be the main event of this show. It really does feel like a big deal, and certainly AEW going in the right direction, having a women's match main event their show. But for Thunder Rosa, she's been around for about 6 months now in AEW. I know she's still under contract to NWA, but I certainly think the winner this week on Dynamite probably will be the next one that will go against Hikaru Shida. And let's not kid ourselves. That championship needs to change hands, and I think long term I can see Thunder Rosa carrying that division because she's such an incredible athlete, definitely one of the best, if not the best, that is in the AEW ranks, and definitely one of my favourite performers to see in all of women's wrestling. But do I think she will win on Wednesday? Actually, at the moment, I've got a feeling that Britt Baker might just come out on top, but saying that, Britt Baker has been getting advantage after advantage here, so we do kind of need some form of payoff to close this chapter. So maybe, just maybe, Thunder Rosa is the one that's going to pick up the victory here and could be going to take on Hikaru Shida and win that championship. But time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. But definitely, I agree with you. Thunder Rosa is definitely, the future is bright, and this division could be built around her going forward. Before we get to our next question, I just want to say a big happy birthday to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. That's right, happy birthday, George. Hope you have a fantastic day, mate, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Ask SCW. And everybody, go and give him a follow as well and subscribe on YouTube as well. We should all support each other here in the wrestling community. But George, this week, his question is, if you were to do a similar MJF stable build in WWE, with the reveal being at WrestleMania 37, which 4 wrestlers would you choose and why? Fantastic question, this one. And just before I give my answer, I haven't had an opportunity to talk about MJF and that new stable on Dynamite, and I just want to say, how fantastic was that? Every single person and their dog was saying that this week on Dynamite, MJF was kicking Chris Jericho out of the Inner Circle and was going to take over it. Maybe he'd break up the group, but what no one actually anticipated is what MJF actually was doing was he was using the Inner Circle from day one, not to actually take over the Inner Circle, but to start and make his own group. He was seeing how the Inner Circle worked as a unit, how they connected, how they got on. He wanted to learn how to be a team player. He did that being a part of that stable. It really worked into MJF's character and just the way it was all put together. I mean, Wardlow was missing week here, week there, no one really knowing why, no one understanding any sort of questions like that. The way that was put together and the way that the Inner Circle turned on MJF for him to say, actually, it's now time for me to introduce my group and his group together. I mean, Sean Spears is relevant again. Wardlow in this group is the big muscle, like that Dave Bautista from Evolution. You've got, FTR in there, great tag team, and Tully Blanchard as the manager with the leadership. This is like that 4 horsemen stable we've been rumoured for a long time, and MJF still comes off as the worst heel out of all of these bad heels here. This massive beatdown. It was so amazing to see, and I just wanted to say how great that was, and I really do think we're building now. We've got 2 great stables that are going to go against each other in AEW, and I really think it's going to lead to blood and guts. We really are going to get that War Game style match now. I would not be surprised if that was the main event of Double or Nothing coming up in May. So that's just a quick mini prediction for that there. But going on to your question of how that could work into WWE, how would I book it if I was to make a stable like that? Well, for me, I looked at things and to looking through the roster, I have gone with Seth Rollins as the leader because I think for me, Seth Rollins right now, he's got a great storyline going on with Cesaro. He's come back. He wants people to embrace the vision. That's what he wants right now. And he says that superstars like Cesaro waste their potential. They're just not on his level. He wants to improve SmackDown. He wants to improve tomorrow. He wants to take superstars and almost he wants disciples like he's had before. But what Seth Rollins can do, he can go into that match at WrestleMania against Cesaro, lose that match because obviously Cesaro isn't wasted potential. He's the guy that is going to be the next level. But Seth Rollins realizes that through this, he is not getting to the position he wants to be, because to actually embrace his vision, to make his vision believable, Seth Rollins needs to be Universal Champion. He needs to be the top end of that card, and Seth Rollins hasn't been champion since, what, November 2019? It will be getting close to near that 18-month mark where Seth Rollins has not been in and around the main event. He will realise that his vision cannot be fulfilled on his own, and what better way to do it? Let's go back to the start of the video. How better to influence people to embrace that vision if they can't get on TV? Let's go to the catering club. Let's look at the superstars that could be used for this, and think of this as a stable. We could have Seth Rollins, we can have Andrade, we could have Aleister Black, and yes, I'm going to reintroduce Buddy Murphy, because Buddy Murphy has not survived without Seth Rollins. He was getting the most TV time, the most exposure. He was nothing without Seth. And of course, Seth now sort of start to interfere in that rivalry with Cesaro in the matches with Buddy Murphy. There could be a realignment there. And I mean, like I say, Buddy Murphy is not doing well without Seth. Aleister Black and Andrade, they've lost their way. They're embracing the vision. They're doing the dirty work of Seth Rollins. And I think looking at this, it's a very creditable stable. I'd even say, I mean, if Andrade was to be eventually released, someone like Bo Dallas could come in as well, could be an extra piece of this as maybe a fifth member. I don't know, but looking at that catering club, that would be a good way to do it, because these people are easily manipulated. They're brainwashed. I think that's a great way to go down. I definitely would love to know people's thoughts of that idea in the comments below. Next question is coming from Lorenzo at Carrillo, asking for us now. When will we see a proper Seth versus Shinsuke feud, and would you like it? Where do you see Kevin Owens fitting in for WrestleMania? And when do you think WWE is going to finally split up The Miz and John Morrison? Keep it up, SCW. Well, thank you first off for the very kind words there. And going into your questions to start off with Seth and Shinsuke Nakamura, that stare down on SmackDown this week, I was very pleased to see it. They have wrestled once before. I think it was Survivor Series 2018. It was one of the matches of the card, actually. And Seth was really in his babyface run. Shinsuke was the heel. Roles are reversed now. And I think, personally for me, I'd like to see it go down. I feel more than likely it could happen on a SmackDown, which would be a bit disappointing. I'd like to see it go down at FastLane. I think that would be a great place to build that match and really push things on for Cesaro and Rollins at WrestleMania. Wouldn't like a full-length program with Nakamura and Rollins? Definitely somewhere down the line. It's an exciting match, but unfortunately, we're so close to FastLane. If we're going to get this match, it's either going to be this week coming up on SmackDown, or it's going to be at the pay-per-view, which I kind of hope it's at the pay-per-view, because I think these two, when given time, can put on a killer match. So, yeah, I'd like to see it. But as a proper, what I call proper feuds, long-term ones, maybe going into the summer they can revisit it. But certainly, for now, maybe Rollins can take out Nakamura, maybe takes him out of WrestleMania, has the match and feud with Cesaro, then maybe Nakamura can come back and try and get revenge later down the line. We'll have to wait and see how it's going to pan out. As for Kevin Owens at WrestleMania, I was very disappointed the way he was brought back to SmackDown this week. You'd think after that Elimination Chamber match he would want revenge on Jey Uso for the way that he was annihilated and taken out of that match. It seems to me, though, that if I'm going to predict a direction of where he's going to be linked going into WrestleMania, Sami Zayn is someone he keeps being linked with in the last few couple of weeks, maybe like a month or so. Go back to that Elimination Chamber match. Them two were talking a lot of smack at the start of the Elimination Chamber match. During the match itself, Sami Zayn wanted Kevin Owens on side, said that, the company is against superstars like us. Kevin Owens ignored Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was eliminated from the match, but of course then Kevin Owens didn't survive in that environment without him. Now this week on SmackDown, Sami Zayn wants Kevin Owens to be a part of the documentary. Maybe we could get Kevin Owens against Sami Zayn one-on-one at WrestleMania. It has been many years now since these two have faced off. I know we've seen them face off many times before, but it's the one place, the one show these two haven't been able to go face-to-face, one-on-one, is at WrestleMania. I do think a lot of people would actually enjoy the match. It's been a long time since they've faced off each other. I'm sure it would mean a lot to the both of them being such close friends behind the cameras, being almost best friends, I think, behind the cameras. But the only other way I see it going down, if not, Sami Zayn is trying to still be involved with the Intercontinental Championship. Maybe Kevin Owens could be thrown into a multi-man Intercontinental Championship ladder match. We've got Big E and Apollo at the pay-per-view. Sami Zayn, King Corbin still around the mix. Nakamura's been in there as well. Maybe Kevin Owens comes in. We've got 6 superstars. Let's throw that belt up above the ring. Let's get a ladder. Let's have some fun. That could be a good match that could happen at WrestleMania. And for Miz and Morrison, when will WWE split them up? Well, certainly not going into WrestleMania, but maybe afterwards. We'll have to wait and see. I think it's a storyline that should happen further down the line. We've seen John Morrison have a little bit of singles matches as of late, had a bit of success as well, getting himself a US Championship match at the Elimination Chamber. Of course, now I think he's got injured in the last couple of weeks, so that's probably halted a bit of momentum, but hopefully he's okay for WrestleMania. We can have The Miz and Morrison against Bad Bunny and Damian Priest. Maybe a defeat for The Miz at WrestleMania to Bad Bunny may cause that rift, that split. I still have always said if you're going to break them up, I personally would like John Morrison to be aligned with Taya Valkyrie. I think that as a partnership like they had in Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling as well, I think was been very successful out of WWE, even in AAA as well. Should give that a shout out. To do that on Raw, I think would be good. I think that John Morrison would be a solid mid-carder. For The Miz, I'm not sure where he would go from there, but I think he would still find himself a comfortable enough mid-card position in WWE. And for me, although if John Morrison and Ty were together, I'd want them as a heel duo. I think if you are going to do Miz versus Morrison at any stage, Morrison obviously would go as the babyface. Next question from Renier Porter. If the pandemic never started, would Roman Reigns have ever turned heel? This is a fascinating question, this one. I'm actually going to turn around and say no. I don't think so. Roman was going to face Goldberg, and he was going to beat Goldberg. I suppose had we have continued on through the year, Roman maybe have got more desperate and wanted to remain champion, maybe would have turned heel that way, maybe everything would have got to his head. I think that would have been an interesting storyline to have gone down, that Roman had been the superhero for so long, but had morphed into the head of the table. That could have kind of worked, but I don't think that would have happened. I think Roman would have gone on and probably continued to face the Fiend, Braun Strowman, maybe would have got a triple threat that way, and I think Roman would have continued a babyface, and I'm not sure we'd have got this. So, no, I'm going to say no on this one. It's a very fascinating question, but Roman obviously was off TV, wasn't around for the pandemic, decided he wanted to come back as a heel, had a great partnership with Paul Heyman lined up, who, of course, when Roman, if he'd have won the belt of WrestleMania, Paul Heyman was creative with Raw for a lot of the time. So there is a big chance that a lot of this may have never happened. Everything just happened to work out in time and fit itself together. So yeah, I think final answer for this one, I'm going to say I don't think it would have happened. Mike, Italian Habs Mike, with our next two questions now here on AskSCW. Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole has potential to be the best feud since Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. I agree. How would you book the feud to where it can be one of the best feuds ever? And the second question is, how would you book Pete Dunne being the best technical wrestler storyline, and who should face him? Two very good questions there, and I have to agree with Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole. And what's beautiful about this rivalry is that other superstars are in play to keep this being fresh the whole way through. And one thing that's essential in this rivalry is time and not rushing. If you do things slowly, that slow build, that slow pace that we've seen at this point of this storyline, this has potential to go on for months, even potentially years. If booked correctly, it can be involving the NXT Championship, which probably will give it that extra level. If you go for match 2 or match 3 with these two, it will be the only way to really up the ante if you're not bringing out the toys like with street fights and cage matches or 3 stages of hell, whatever you want to do to make this happen. But those sort of things is where you should build this. You should have a straight up singles match at the first takeover. Second takeover, can be involving, a street fight or something like that. And then the third one, get that NXT Championship involved in it, and even beyond really can take it further. Because, Gargano and Ciampa went over years. They have gaps here and there, and they found a way to make it go on for like 2-3 years. So, but for me, they have Roderick Strong, they have Bobby Fish that can play themselves into it, maybe freshen things up with triple threat matches or fatal 4-ways. You have to do the fatal 4-way with Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong at one of those takeovers. Certainly would be an interesting vibe. You go down that. And let's not forget as well, Finn Balor is sort of involved with this somewhere. It looks like he's going to be taken out of the picture for the time being. He's got now the feud with Karrion Kross, which of course was a fantastic way to end NXT, by the way. What took you so long? What a great line that was. And to see Karrion Kross just standing there, arms folded, TikTok, the time has come. I can't wait to see how that match is going to play out. But afterwards, Finn Balor could perhaps get into the picture. Let's say someone like Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish, they turn around and they realign themselves with Adam Cole. Adam Cole's got rid of the dead weight, but if they help Adam Cole defeat Kyle O'Reilly at one of these matches, I'm sure Cole will take them back on side. For someone like Roderick Strong, maybe he's a great wrestler, but maybe he's just a bit lost without Adam Cole. Maybe he might say, I need Adam Cole to succeed at that level, or maybe helps himself realign. It just has those variables to keep that storyline ticking and going. And I think that that's what will play the storyline out over, at least over the next few months, and will make it one of the best rivalries in NXT ever. And I totally agree. This has potential to be one of the best. If not, I think has potential to be the best NXT storyline of all time. We're going to have to wait and see how it's going to be booked. As for Pete Dunne, yes, he is one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, and he's had some unbelievable matches in NXT, NXT UK, and of course in the UK scene beforehand. I'm loving the storyline of what the direction they're going to go with this, and clearly they're going to look to find technical wrestlers to have these masterclass matches with Pete Dunne. I think this will be a fantastic storyline that you can play out throughout the year. For me, I did an NXT Standard Deliver match card predictions, and the match I picked for the time was Roderick Strong's. I think he was a superstar I had kind of left out at the time that I think was a great technical wrestler. I mean, there's people like Kushida that could fit that role as well, perhaps for a good takeover match. I would love to see superstars come down like, Chad Gable, or I'd like to see a return of someone like Kurt Angle. I think would be amazing to have a match there, but I just don't see those sort of things happening. I know a couple of us suggested Timothy Thatcher being an idea. There's certainly lots of potential opponents you could do. Drew Gulak was another one. The only thing with Drew Gulak that for me makes it seem less believable, you've seen how some of these people are booked on Raw or SmackDown. Someone chasing the 24/7 championship just doesn't become believable as someone that can come to NXT, have a 20-minute match with Pete Dunne. It puts Pete Dunne on that 24/7 level, which you just don't want to see. So I want to see credible, technical, great wrestlers come and face Pete Dunne. Who it's going to be, I have no idea. But what I will turn around and say is that whoever it's going to be, I know that it's going to be great matches ahead, and it's going to be very exciting to see how it's going to play out. But I think we need to have technical wrestler after technical wrestler. Pete Dunne finds his way through the first few of those matches, and then when we get to a big takeover moment where we can have a big reveal or a big superstar to come and face Pete Dunne, these two can have absolute masterclass. For me, I'd love Daniel Bryan to come down to NXT and have, be that one that maybe puts Pete Dunne to lose, or Pete Dunne gets that rub still. If Daniel Bryan comes to NXT, puts over Pete Dunne even better. Pete Dunne then can really say, look, I've beat the best in the world over a number of consecutive matches and months. I'm the guy. For me, that would be awesome to see. Next question comes from Dan the Man Williams, Mr. DWE. Who do you have battle for the UK Championship at NXT TakeOver, since it's 2 nights, and I think they'll have a title match on there? For me, I would love to see a Dragunov rematch. As would I. I would love to see that. Just to say they had one of the best matches of last year on NXT UK. Anyone that's not seen that match, just put yourself half an hour at some point. Go and watch that match. It was absolutely spectacular. I think there's a chance that Volta could be at NXT TakeOver, because if Jordan Devlin is flying over to come to the States now, there must be a reason why Volta could. And Imperium has been a big tease that they're all going to be together at some point further down the line. But the direction with the storyline looks like it's going to be potentially, with Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa. I'd say a tag team match is probably something that could be a likely, scenario that could happen. But if I had to pick one, I would say Tommaso Ciampa should be someone that would go there. I mean, I know a lot of people would love to see Volta and Finn Balor. I know we've spoke about that previously. But Finn Balor right now is in a different storyline, a different program. It just wouldn't be able to go down. So Tommaso Ciampa, I think, would be seen as a dream match for a lot of people. So yeah, that's a match I would really like to see. Volta and Tommaso Ciampa, I think that would be, it just would be awesome, wouldn't it? Let's be fair. Give them 25 minutes, damn it. I'd sit there and watch it and just have me popcorn and enjoy away, because I think it'd be amazing. So yeah, that would be my expectation. It was my predictions I did on my NXT match card predictions video a couple of days ago. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen as and the way it plays out. But for example, your example of Ilya Dragunov, again, we can bring more NXT UK guys over if we can get one over. Why can't we get more over? I think the big question is, though, with NXT UK is Jordan Devlin coming for the short term, or is he coming for the long term? We've seen Pete Dunne come for the long term, the grizzled young veterans. Jordan Devlin could be that next one there who's going to be staying for the long term in the main of NXT. And if they're coming just for a short term, I'm not sure how the scenario works with the current pandemic. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it's going to play out. But certainly, if I had to pick one, I'm going to Tommaso Ciampa at this time. And that would leave Timothy Thatcher to go against the rest of Imperium in some format, whether it's Marcus Bartel or Alexander Wolf. We'll have to see. Maybe that could be on night 1 of NXT TakeOver. Next question comes from Jim, I believe a first-time asker. Thank you, Jim, for your question. What's one thing you could change about pro wrestling? Spoilers, that would be definitely the first one I would say get rid of completely. I don't know what it is. I know it's, wrestling is scripted, and, we have this where a storyline has a chance to have a destination, and for some reason, with reports, has to come out and tell us everything that's going to happen before it happens. It's like, there's no wonder why things become predictable and are not a surprise, because people out there can't help themselves but say, oh, by the way, we know so-and-so is going to be in the Royal Rumble. We know so-and-so is due a return. Spoiler alert, this person has signed with the company or whatever. You know, remember back in the day, 20 years ago or so, everything was surprise. During the Monday Night War, you had shock value because you didn't see things coming. When you don't see these things happening or coming, like Edge actually coming at the Royal Rumble last year, you get those magical pops, those magical moments. And it's such a shame that, unfortunately, there's just... I mean, it's a different world we live in with social media. It's so much easier to access information. I mean, to be fair, someone like Dave Meltzer is around now, was around then, but you just didn't really have the same access to get to it. Now, you've got patrons, you've got all sorts of YouTube channels, and his information gets out so freely across Twitter and Facebook and Instagram that, unfortunately, it's hard to avoid those spoilers. So for me, spoilers is a big part of what I think can affect the enjoyment of a professional wrestling fan, because if people see or know what's coming, where's the shock value? It's like knowing what's going to happen at the end of the movie that you wanted to see that's going to come out. You know, for example, if the next Marvel movie comes out and you know the finish before it starts, would you bother going to watch it? You know, it's that kind of vibe. So for me, spoilers is the main one. As an in-ring product, because obviously, just to make sure I cover the basic of your question in the correct way, I would just say that I would love more consistent storytelling, cliffhangers, a reason to watch the following show, a need to watch what happens next. You get that in some forms, in some places, in patterns here and there, but it's not consistent enough for my liking. I would like that on a more consistent basis, because if storylines really do capture you, you have that need, that itch to go, I've got to see that show next week. For example, after the end of Dynamite this week, what a finish, what a way that went down. I have to know the next part of that chapter. So for me, that would be from an in-ring perspective, on TV perspective, and certainly more of that, I suppose, is probably a dig at WWE, but, you know, that's just how I feel at the moment in 2021. But they do great things from here and there, but I would like to see it on a more consistent basis. Dylan Ketchum with our next two questions now here on AskSCW. Do you think Asuka is possibly missing WrestleMania? And since Jericho already announced a new member, if he was, of the Inner Circle, who do you think it was going to be? Two fantastic questions, and let's touch on the Inner Circle first, if you don't mind, because Asuka is tied in with our next questions as well. So for the Inner Circle, there's been a few rumours going around, but two names popped to mind. One that was addressed on television on Dynamite, that I think it was Excalibur actually said that Scorpio Sky went up the same podium that the Inner Circle came out of. So there was a wonder and a tease if Scorpio Sky was going to be introduced as that next member. Of course, he just turned heel as well, and of course the Inner Circle at the moment of coming out were heels, so that could have been a kind of fun 2 and 2 together to put it, because Scorpio Sky is a fantastic performer, and I think to be a part of a stable right now would probably help elevate him up the card a little bit. But I think a more likely answer, and this one's been going around the rumour mill, I mentioned spoilers for you, and then there's me talking about it in the next question, but I mean, the idea of it is that I think Zelina Vega was someone that was rumoured to potentially going into the Inner Circle. I think all of them have been speaking on podcasts and different formats that they would have loved a female member of the Inner Circle, and I think the idea around that would be, of course, with Zelina Vega being with Santana and Ortiz for their tag team matches, which I think would be great for them. It would give them that something a little bit extra, because right now in AEW, the way they're presented, they are not presented as a top tag team, unfortunately. There's someone that's in the middle, lost in the shuffle, but they work well under the Inner Circle group. They don't work really as a tag team on their own. So to have Vega behind them as sort of a managing role, I think that would work really well for the matches and would actually probably get them more victories and push them towards that championship run. Hopefully they more than deserve in AEW, in my opinion, one of the best tag teams in the world. So that would probably be my prediction if it was to go down. If I had to pick one, I think a female member would work, and I think Zelina Vega probably would be my pick if I had to say who I think it was going to be. But going on to Asuka and possibly missing WrestleMania, and this would be really upsetting, from Asuka's point of view, let's be fair. She's been carrying the Raw Women's division for a long time. Arguably, the run, or the second run, has not been as strong due to the creative just not really giving her enough good storylines, really, giving her good matches, but not really giving her enough to do in that storyline and storytelling to get all the way to near WrestleMania and then, get injured and then can't defend the championship. It's awful, because I think first and foremost, speaking to Noob, who's our next question, suggested the idea of Asuka being a WrestleMania host, which I think is a great idea. I think it would be a lot of fun that you could watch that, some great sort of segments there, but I just can't see WWE not having the Raw Women's Championship on the line at WrestleMania. I think that's where you have to feel horrible for Asuka to have that long reign, 2 reigns as champion, and then to actually be stripped of the championship so close to WrestleMania, to have that big magical WrestleMania match and that Mania moments. I mean, her against Charlotte, of course, we have seen the match a few times before, but this could have really been built as something for WrestleMania. Of course, Asuka not being around, it really damages the idea of putting that sort of story together to make something happen for WrestleMania. And of course, we won't jump the gun. Of course, it's speculation at this point. I really hope Asuka is available for WrestleMania. I certainly would like to see her there competing on the biggest stage of them all. But if it can't happen, then I think the best way to go about it is a tournament. That would be the way to do it. It probably ended up being Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley for the vacant Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania, which, I mean, of course, if you were to believe reports, Charlotte was meant to be walking away from WrestleMania as champion, originally from Lacey Evans. Probably likely would have been Asuka, would have been the next candidate, would have done so. So would Rhea Ripley lose 2 WrestleManias in a row to Charlotte? I think that would seem quite bad booking from a lot of people's perspective. So yeah, I don't know how WWE is going to get in and around this, but let's hope it doesn't get to that. Let's hope that this is just rumours, it's just hearsay, and that Asuka is cleared in time for WrestleMania, and that she can have a killer match with Charlotte or whoever WWE decides to throw in the mix. Noob and Co finishes off this week here on Ask SCW with 3 questions for us now. Do you think fans also take the blame for Asuka's booking for the past 3 years? Controversial on that one. What are your thoughts on NXT's women's tag team titles? And do you think that Raw's women's title story is more interesting than the SmackDown women's title story? 3 very interesting questions there for you, and let's start off with Asuka and her booking. I think in general, let's just not put Asuka in this, let's categorize everything as a whole. Fans are as responsible at times for the way things are done in WWE and how things are booked, because if you look at things, WWE try and portray and push certain storylines, push certain things on us, and sometimes as fans, we just want to reject it, and fans have got a habit of being toxic on Twitter, wherever, and are quite vocal in arenas where they're not going to accept it, they're not going to put up with it. We don't believe in this character change, and that does come down to some of the way that the booking is presented. I'm not saying that the fans are in the wrong for doing so. If booking wasn't bad to begin with, I think fans wouldn't necessarily go easy to go and criticise, but sometimes things are given to us, and I think we can be as responsible for something not working as creative, and I think that's where I'm trying to get at here. And there's many times when we've turned around and say WWE tried to put the belt on Roman Reigns how many times previous, and because we wouldn't let it happen, and we were all rejecting the idea, WWE would keep delaying the idea, and we knew it was going to happen eventually. It kind of left a real sort of lull period for like months, even years, to get where we are now, and thankfully we're in a place where we're Roman now. But moving it to back to where you want with Asuka, for me personally, I mean, WWE booked Asuka to lose at WrestleMania 34, and I think that's where things kind of started to go wrong, and I think that creative was where it started with the blame of. Then the storyline with Carmella, I think, was definitely a place where I think Asuka shouldn't have been booked around. If Carmella and Asuka was a mismatch in NXT, for example, that Asuka would have eaten up as an appetizer. Carmella wouldn't have even made it to the main course of dinner. That was how things were with them two, how they were in NXT. The fact that Asuka comes to the main roster, was undefeated, lost Charlotte Flair, then immediately fed to Carmella, who some may have argued was perhaps not ready for the role she was put in. I disagree. I think Carmella was a good SmackDown Women's Champion at the time that she was. But I think it's things like that and Asuka's stop-start pushes and stuff that have given fans that reason to perhaps not believe as much. And I think that gives fans, then they give up. I mean, you look at someone like Dolph Ziggler. It's the same. Fans, after a while, they turn around and say, I just don't believe in this character anymore. And then sometimes they pulls it around and they push them back. And when you look at things with the current Asuka and the current storyline, I mean, a lot of it comes down with creative. They've just not given her anything to really do that's of any relevance. And the thing is, you look at it and say, the Women's Tag Team Championships on the main roster, so many double champions in the last year. I mean, Bayley and Sasha Banks didn't need to have that. Asuka didn't need to have that. And it stifles the divisions. And I think that's where I personally have an issue with that, with the double champions, but not necessarily the storylines. But looking into when Charlotte Flair's returned, Asuka had been in a period where, I think her last real meaningful program for the Raw Women's Championship was Zelina Vega. And we're going back there to Clash of Champions. I mean, since then, it was like, I can't even remember who she faced in October, but I mean, Survivor Series in November, which was the champion versus champion with Sasha Banks, and from December up until February, she's been in tag team wrestling. So It's been a bit unfortunate with the Lacey Evans match that never panned out, but perhaps maybe it's for the better. Asuka apparently was rumoured to lose that match, believe it or not, to Lacey Evans to go on to then face Charlotte at WrestleMania. Asuka was going to get the same treatment as previous, and I think that's some of it. I think fans react to what they see of what they are presented on TV from booking. If Asuka was presented as the biggest superstar and was presented the way that Becky Lynch was for a number of years, I think fans would not give up so much. But people are aware, and you and myself included, are very aware of what a talent Asuka is. She's one of the best wrestlers that not only WWE have got, but in the world. She's a fantastic talent. She's great in ring, puts on amazing matches week after week. She's got a lot more experience as well than a lot of the people coming through. And Asuka is in a worthy position. She is worthy of being champion and have been holding that championship on and off. I mean, Bara, was it like a couple of weeks or something, or a month or something? She didn't hold that belt. But apart from that, she's held it from May until now. Minus 3 or 4 weeks, and she's been a worthy person to do so. I just think to have made it perhaps more of a memorable second championship reign. She's had so many potential opponents she could have faced and had great programs with. Shayna Baszler being one of them, Nikki Cross being another one. Alexa Bliss could have been something special, but unfortunately WWE butchered that from the start with the cinematic supernatural stuff. So it's been an unfortunate level of incidents with Asuka, but do fans have to take some of the blame? Of course they do, because we are conditioned to voice our opinions. Social media is a lot bigger than what it used to be, so yeah, I do feel that fans do have to take some responsibility, but a lot of it is through what's presented, and that comes from a written creative direction. It does not come from the performer herself. Of course, there's no question, there's no argument. The performer herself is one of the best in the world. As for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, asking my thoughts on it, I think it's great they've been brought in. I have no problem with that. NXT is probably going to blow the WWE's main roster women's tag team division out of the water, and they've shown this week already that they've got great depth in tag teams, which is amazing to see. My only criticism of it is that they actually awarded the championships to Raquel and Dakota, and then they lost it an hour later. I think that was a bit of weird booking, because I mean, it makes the championships, it made them feel a little bit less important very quickly. It also made the first champions not seem that worthy either, and they'd gone and won the Dusty Cup. So I feel that the best method to have done this would have been to have booked the championships have come in, and we'd have had the finals of the Dusty Cup, and they would have had a rematch, and your winners would have been the first ever champions. And I think that's how it should have gone down, and I think it would have come down just a bit more creditable. But I do think from here on, I don't see that criticism going to continue in NXT. I think NXT will do an amazing job with that division. I can see now Shotzi and Ember going against the Way, probably going forward. I think Indy and Candice will be your next challengers. It does free up Raquel to go for the NXT Women's Championship against Io Shirai. That's been ruined for a long, long time. And also, I mean, one thing you can say, you can never take away Raquel and Dakota were the first ever. Let's not forget, there's only ever one first ever, and even if it's for half an hour, it doesn't make a difference. That will be a trivia question for a long time to come, and I think they are very worthy first-time women's tag team championships on NXT, even if it wasn't such a lengthy run. But yeah, for me overall, I would have preferred to have seen superstars get that exposure, being able to go to Raw and SmackDown. If they'd, say for example, Dakota and Raquel had won those belts, they could have gone to Raw and SmackDown and defended them and got exposure, maybe could have got themselves massively over. Great way to introduce themselves, may have found themselves a space on Raw or SmackDown after losing the championships, but instead, it's going to be on NXT. It's gone now. We can't look at that anymore. I think the belts, now that they're here, they're going to be great. And I do think that NXT is going to make this division solid. And I mean, there's so many talented women in the NXT women's division. And if there was just one championship to go for, now there is two. And it gives a chance to have 3 champions at the same time. So this can only be a good thing for the stacked roster that they have. So to finish up this week then, you asked which is more interesting, the Raw or SmackDown women's division. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to say neither. At the moment, I've got not so much investment in either. I suppose if I was going to pick one side, the Raw side interests me more because of the fact that I'm uncertain of the direction. I'm uncertain if Asuka's going to be cleared to face anyone at WrestleMania. But, I mean, at the moment, we know Charlotte will be the person that gets to go to WrestleMania. And, I mean, I would like to see some sort of way of build for a number one contender. I think that would be great to see at FastLane. I think that it's a safe way of keeping Asuka off TV in the meantime and still having credibility around the championship. So I think that could be a good way to go about it. But for SmackDown, I mean, obviously, the way that Sasha and Bianca has been built has not been not been very good so far. And it seems unfortunate because the Royal Rumble this year was the best ever one that they've done for the Women's Royal Rumble, in my opinion. But the booking of the whole Women's division of Raw SmackDown since after the Royal Rumble, for me, has been very poor. They can do a lot better, and I want to see better. And hopefully things will start taking more shape after Fastlane, because once Sasha and Bianca are not involved with that tag team championship picture anymore, again, don't need double champions. They can focus on them. Sasha may be healed by this point. Reginald may be on her side by this point. We can just push forward with the storyline and we're not stuck in the standstill. As for the Raw Women's division, hopefully we know if Asuka's cleared, that would be a great start. And hopefully we've built up a number one contender. However we're going to do it, if it's 1, 2 contenders, and have a great WrestleMania match. One thing I will say for sure, however the stories have been built, come WrestleMania, both the Women's Championship matches will be spectacular when it comes to WrestleMania. I've got no doubt in that. But one thing I will say, just to finish off positively, NXT Women's division, I mentioned about the Tag Team Championships, their division is strong, and I mean the match this week with Io and Tony, fantastic match. Watch it if you haven't seen it already. But that's all this week here for AskSCW. Thank you for watching. As always, hope you've enjoyed everything. Please let me know your thoughts of any of the topics discussed today in the comments below as well. You can drop a question as well with the hashtag AskSCW if you want a shout out in the next video. Make sure to check out Wrestling Customs 24/7 as well. Custom made championships for your action figures, as well as that, great other items including coasters as well. Go and check out their website now and follow them on social media. Just to let you in as well, go and check out Rated Art for Wrestling. I was on their channel yesterday. We did WCW Super Bowl 3 review, a nice retro review. It's a great fun show. Really enjoyed being a part of it. Thank you for having me on the channel Rated R. And like I say, go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. And as well as that, Jonesy Chats Wrestling, it's his birthday. Go and check out his channel as well. I was on there for his SmackDown review yesterday. I've been joining him quite a bit for Raw and SmackDown reviews as of late. So go and check out on his channel. Give him a sub as well. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow each other on Twitter as well. Let's support everyone out here in the wrestling community. We are one big happy family. Take care. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good one. I will see you for another video on this channel tomorrow, which will be featuring Braun Strowman and Shane McMahon. And then I'll be back on Tuesday for Fast Lane predictions. But that's all for me. Take care. Have yourselves a good one. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube.